Welcome to Product-Led Growth Leaders. I'm your host, Thomas Watkins, and we have a really interesting guest on the show today. It is Dana Yobst. Dana is a growth expert, a go-to-market expert. She is a serial founder and co-founder of multiple companies. She's been in a number of different strategy director and account executive roles, and she is the current head of growth at Zuora. So, Dana, thank you for being with us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. So, why don't we start off by talking about growth departments and just get the audience organized, their ideas organized and clear on what that is? What is, for people who are more on the product side, how should we view the growth department of a company?
So that's a loaded question because every company might view it a little different. Essentially, it needs to have, if you have a Venn diagram, it's in the middle of product, marketing, and sales. So I would look at it as some flavor of a go-to-market motion that combines those three groups.
Excellent. And so I want to dive into those kind of three prongs that you pointed out. Does your current role, you deal with that in your current role?
Yeah, so Zuora is a B2B company. And when you look at the B2B growth motions, all the way on the left, the self-service, I would say product-led growth, and all the way on the right is pure sales-led. And in between, you have kind of product-led sales assist, sales-led product assist. And most established B2B enterprises are going to have a history of sales-led, right? And growth, I would say kind of the early adopters of growth were really on the B2C side, where they could run experiments quickly and see, okay, did the acquisition loop work? Can you reinvest? It gets a little more complicated with B2B because you have longer sales cycles, right? And you're introducing the product into that go-to-market, whereas historically, prospects would see a product in a demo, but they're not going to touch it, play with it in a B2B sales cycle. So that's the new component and why the product team really needs to get involved. And then you need to market to those folks who would use the product. It may be a dev persona, a product management persona, a more user persona versus a buyer persona.
Okay. And then before we really dive into that, I want to orient us on a final thing. When we think about go to market and growth, do you think of a hard and fast division between the difference between them? Is go to market, it's beginning companies and they're about to launch versus growth, you're pretty established, maybe above a certain mark. And are the skill sets different?
Yeah, I would say go to market is more traditionally sits under the chief revenue officer. So it's more marketing and sales. And growth can be any size company, but it incorporates that experimentation, the product side, and the rapid iteration. So small, big, it doesn't really matter. And the growth team could roll up to product, it could roll up to marketing. It depends.
Got you. Okay, so let's dive into that. The interplay between sales, marketing, and product. What are some of the things that happen out there in the world, and how do you think that it could be better or modified?
Sure. I can give a real life example. I've been really working on a trial at Zuora. It's been very successful in a lot of ways, and we still have some room to go in other ways. Now, Zuora is a monetization platform. It has traditionally marketed to finance leaders, right? The CFO, et cetera. Those are our buyers. Now, as we've seen developers get more and more power, as usage-based pricing has really grown, now the developers are much more a part of the buying experience, as well as the product managers. If we build a trial, we still have to talk to those folks in the right way, market to them, right? That's a shift in marketing. And then sales needs to be able to speak to that persona and talk to them, right? When they're in the trial, they need product support. They don't developers do not want to go through a 3-call discovery process. That's not their bag, and it really turns them off. So the combination of those needs to happen. If you just throw a trial out there without any support, it's going to have limited success on the self-serve side.
Okay, so this is really interesting now, because a lot of companies, if they were built by developers, and depending on where they grow and how they grow, they might stay a developer-led culture. Can you contrast for us what, in terms of what kind of company you think folks should aspire to have? So developer-led, yes, they built the tool, but they might not know everything there and be super skilled at the sales and marketing and the growth side of things. And then the growth side, the developers might think these people are out of touch. They're not one of us. They didn't build the tool. We're in the trenches. So can you tell us a little bit about the dynamics there?
Yeah, so I would say historically, probably the easiest path for companies has been developer founded, developer led, and then as they grow and the PLG movement has really made this possible, then they start to layer on sales as they see signals. Hey, we need bigger deals. People don't want to pay 6-7 figures without talking to someone. So they're able to add that. From the traditional B2B side, I think the signals are, hey, you have your traditional buyer, maybe in the marketing side, maybe finance, and then you start seeing this developer show up, right? Whereas traditionally, they just weren't really a big factor. Now, maybe behind the scenes, they could block deals, but now they're really just, hey, am I going to build this myself or am I going to use a tool? It's the rise of the user versus the buyer, right? Which is the groundswell, right? So I would see most successful B2B companies are starting to look at it both ways. Yes, we need a top-down approach where we're working with C-levels, but we also need a bottoms-up motion where we can work with those folks, right, and meet in the middle, because we know it's not always one and it's not always the other.
So now, earlier in your trichotomy, we've got the sales, marketing, and product. Now, growth let's do a little distinction between the sales and marketing side. So far, we're talking about kind of those two with product on this side. How about sales versus marketing and some of the between them that we should watch out for or manage or make sure that it plays out in a beneficial way?
Yeah, I think this delves into the age-old friction of sales and marketing. And I like to say I'm a retired enterprise rep. I was a rep for 10 plus years and I managed sales and marketing. And I feel like there tends to be fallout and friction when marketing's job is to get leads and sales job is to close leads without the bridge between them, without the real connection. We're getting the leads, but who is the lead? Is it the right lead? How does it loop back? And the product is also going, okay, we got that lead. Did we deliver the experience? And now we haven't done this, but I see the trend as product managers getting a piece of the pie, having a number on their head, right, with the PLG movement, because what they deliver is a very important part of the buying process. And if they are disconnected from commissions, incentives, numbers, then they can be building a product in the back end without a deep concern. And it does, maybe developers are not as coin operated as sales tends to be, but just all going for that same number of how are we bringing in new revenue? How are we growing it? Are our users happy, right? It could be NPS, something where it's directly from your customers.
Excellent. So what is for you and people in similar positions that you've observed, what is your relationship with the designers or the designers on the product team?
So that is a great question. And one of the things I look at is, okay, we have our trial, we have our core product. Right now, the trial is our core product with different pieces, right? Now, if you look at, okay, I'm a brand new user and I want to accomplish 5 things very quickly, they might need a different UI, right? And the question is, do you take your design? Do you take your developers? Is there enough value in them building that onboarding for a trial specifically? Or should that onboarding be a part of the whole product? And this is a question that we're grappling with now because the use cases are different. The idea would be that anything that gets you to value faster is going to apply to both groups. So I don't have a strong answer. There's always that question of resources and where should you dedicate the resources to get your most bang for your buck.
Okay, and this question might be asking for too much detail, and let me know if it is, but is the design team at Zuora particularly powerful, big, or maybe more adjacent to and within what the developers are doing?
We've had with FY25, we have a new chief design officer. So that's really awesome. He actually came from one of our acquisitions, Zephyr, and he's really making a lot of changes and getting in there. And I think the whole company is really leaning into the user experience. So I think, yes, he does have a lot of power. I'm not even sure if we had that role before him. We certainly had head designers, but I'm not sure if they were C-level. I'd have to check that.
Because it seems to me that people on the growth side have a secret weapon, and I mean that in the most non-nefarious way possible, in the designers. Because you might say, as a growth person, you might say, hey, we think there's a big opportunity for the product to grow in a certain direction, or we've been hearing complaints that a certain aspect of our product usage isn't so easy and it's not such a great experience. Maybe we can highlight that with the user researchers and not tell them what conclusions to come up with, but say, hey, should we be investigating this question over here? Are there things that we can find out over there? And then it seems like you might have a direct, anyone in this kind of growth position have a direct through line into the product through that.
Yeah, and I think the rapid feedback from users, I'm constantly trying to get feedback from them. I have a button in the trial, schedule an onboarding session, and I'm never sure what they want when I'm going to get on the phone. But I've gotten feedback. I couldn't find this particular API I needed. I got very frustrated. That's great feedback. How do we make that easier to find? So I feel like most of the feedback is very actionable for both the design team, product team. Now, some things the growth team uses are on top of the product, like things that walk users through different experiences. That's going to be something I can build. There's some design on it, but it's not led by developers. And that's because our production users don't need that. It's more to get new users comfortable with things.
And so what kinds of analytics tools do you use? So you mentioned that the feedback is very often actionable. To me, that sounds like maybe a ticketing kind of system. Okay.
Yeah, we have a tool for analytics called, it's not really an analytics tool, but this is what we use. This is what I use for this user pilot. So it is user analytics, and it's the same tool that enables me to push messaging into the app. Our documentation team needs it. So because I have all the user data and analytics, I could say when a product marketing persona creates 5 products, then do this, right? And I can handle that all without any engineering help. So that's really great. And we can look at the analytics by user role, by company, and that helps inform us what are successful users and successful companies doing so that we can build that into the experience and get users to aha faster.
And so, and how explicit is the goal for PLG? You can say as little or as much as you want on that, of course, but is it OKR level where you're thinking of it as we need to, where there's metrics specifically attached and it's operationalized and defined. And this is how we know we've made it or on the right track.
Yeah, we're not quite to like the top level OKRs. A lot of this has been experimental. So I'd say we have two paths. One is product-led sales, and one is so product-led sales, and we have sales-led product assist. And the sales-led product assist, that's more of, hey, you have our traditional sales-led, and then you're in an opportunity, and now we need a trial. And they leverage all the infrastructure. They have a solution consultant who works with those users. That's a little more controlled. And then we have the ability product-led, where folks can sign up on our website. Through that, they get email messaging. There's no one explicitly working with them. And that piece, we're still really experimenting with a lot more, right? There's a lot of flexibility in a platform like Zuora. So how do you understand what someone needs and get them to value very quickly while also communicating the breadth of functionality without confusing them?
Now, do you think that a core product team should have a sales or marketing person on the actual team? So when I think about product teams and I think about you have the technology representative who's usually the head architect, you have the person who represents the product. That's really what it is. It's the product owner is supposed to represent the product. Then you have on a team that I think is doing it right, you have a UX person on that core team. Does the product person need to be deeper in the kind of marketing and sales mindset than you might normally have with just a product owner? Because the product owner is on the product team and they're around the developers a lot of the time. Do you think more representation is needed from that side, or is it just about doing it right? Or is this framework something that you even intersect with at all, where you've got the central multi representative team, almost like representing different parties of the company? Do you have any thoughts?
I think in theory, the product managers who are set up to succeed the most do have a line into marketing. They do have a line into prospects. Product marketing is also an important part there. I feel like when there's a deal and the field wants to get a product manager on the deal because they're really going to help sell it, that's a successful product manager, because they understand the market, they understand the customers, and with that knowledge, they being the collective team can start building that into a trial. So I think if there's a big disconnect where product is not tightly incorporated with the field, then they may miss some nuances. Now, that can obviously be more difficult, particularly in large teams. And there can be ways other than getting in calls to do that. But ultimately, everyone is building for the prospects. So the more people that have interaction of knowledge of that, and sometimes that's in win reports and loss reports, which we do really regularly. So we'll see, oh goodness, like we lost because of X feature, or we won because of this feature. Great. I wonder who else will love that feature. How do we exploit that more?
And so how should a company think about growing a growth team? So if it's a small product company that's a startup and it's just 6 people doing everything, and maybe they say, okay, now wouldn't be time for a growth expert. Would it be that you're in a clear traction phase? Would it be like after VCs? And how do they do it? Do they say, we're going to just start using tools and studying how it's done? Should they hire a growth kind of expert who's going to assemble a team and put it together for them? How should that go?
I think that one of the gates you would have as a small company is definitely product market fit, because you don't want to confuse your acquisition techniques with a product market fit. So once you know you have product market fit, and if you're a small company, you're starting PLG, right? There's few companies who are starting B2B. So then I think it's typically a marketing persona who's running different ads, running different acquisition loops to see what works and getting that feedback right away. As they grow, and there were some great examples of this at the conference where I met you, as growth teams grow, they'll have a UX person on the growth team. They'll have engineers because they need to experiment really rapidly and not be beholden to a 6-month roadmap because they're not sure. They're going to build something, not necessarily the best way just to test it out. And when they prove it, they might get it into the roadmap. Now, our team is mostly a team of one, so we're not quite there.
Yeah. And so one thing I find really exciting about PLG, and for the audience, the conference that was mentioned was the recent PLGTM conference that was in San Francisco, where Dana and I met. And Dana gave a great talk. So one of the things that I really like about PLG being so big is that people who are high ranking and close to business explicitly recognizing that selling to users is not the same as selling to buyers. And UX throughout my whole career, that's a tough sell sometimes. Sometimes the business type like, so look, we want the biggest checks possible, or I don't really care about like the user experience as long as we're kind of making. But your role is high ranking and embed in the business. You are the business largely. What is the messaging that comes from you or someone in your role, or does it need messaging? Is it just an easy, you're there, so they already know they're supposed to be doing it? What are some of the effective sells of getting through to people? No, this is important, that the user persona is very important to please.
I would say that is a kind of continual process, a quarterly process almost. One of the things I really learned in my attempts to grow this were that I really did need to communicate internally to the executives and sell this through because it is something new. It is something different, right? And we are large enterprise B2B. So there's concern, oh, is this only for startups? Because we don't want to start selling to a bunch of startups, right? So that's a concern. And we're a public company and we have responsibility to our shareholders, right? So that is a valid concern. So the conversation is then around, okay, in these large companies, do developers have the same amount of power? Are people still going through this product-led motion? Do they still want hands-on keyboards, or is that really only small and mid-sized companies? And the proof of that is really through deals that close with a trial. I can say what I want all day, but until we're showing revenue, no one needs to listen.
So it really is still data centric a thing. But the fact that you even like strongly believe in it is important, and that's a big part of it. And it just seems like that's not the path of least resistance for folks that are embedded deep in the business part of the company.
Yeah, that's a strong point and a conversation I have regularly. I think it helped me to be new at the company. So new,
Fresh.
didn't
Yeah.
know a ton of history, just thought, hey, we can just do this. When I used to be a consultant, then I tend to like want to break things. But yeah, it's not smooth sailing, right? It's definitely not kick back all day at your job and just sail through. It's definitely not something like that. And there's a lot of big role models in PLG who have had to leave companies because they haven't been successful in these types of things. It's a recommitment. And if the dollars aren't there, I wouldn't blame the business for not supporting it.
Excellent. Remind us of what Zuora is and why people should think about getting it.
Sure. Zuora is a monetization platform that basically takes recurring relationships of all sorts and turns them into recurring revenue. So we have about over 1,000 customers, including Box, Zoom, New York Times, General Motors. So if you think of the old days of subscription, this is the modern iteration. So there's a lot of usage-based pricing, right? There's a lot of pricing and packaging that are different, particularly with the explosion of AI. Now everyone wants to charge usage-based because that's how AI is charging, right? So that has really driven a shift in the market that is exciting because customers get a value that is more equal to their usage. It reduces a friction of one size fits all. But it's tricky, right? Finance needs to be able to track it, invoice, and then if you need to modify something midterm, it's chaos unless you have a trackable system of record like Zuora.
Nice. And that's a
And then
difficult.
revenue recognition on top, right? Revenue recognition for usage-based pricing is a whole nother ball of wax. So we do that also.
Nice. Folks, continue to check that out. And then where can people find out more about you?
I think LinkedIn is probably
LinkedIn.
easiest.
It's typically LinkedIn.
Dana Yobst. Yeah, my name is, you won't find more than one of me.
Yes. Yobst is the last
Yes.
name.
B as in boy. That's my trademark.
Dana Yobst, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you,
Really enjoyed it.
Thomas. All right. Bye-bye.